I think it went off. I thought it was on. Oh well, anyway, as the projector is coming on, technology never was my strong suit. That's why I have tech support. Along the lines of that we studied last week of what we don't know won't hurt us in a false sense, knowing that that is inaccurate, because a lack of knowledge really can hurt us. Go ahead and turn in your Bibles, if you will, to Luke chapter 1. It's going to be the theme for tonight's lesson. Luke chapter 1 is where we are in our Bible reading at 7:3. And several months ago, normally when someone makes a request, I get to that request very quickly. But several months ago, Don Ross made a request. He said, I'd like for you to do a lesson on the Immaculate Conception. In case you're wondering what the term the Immaculate Conception is the idea of Mary becoming pregnant prior to marriage or any relationship with a man. And so that is found both in Matthew and in Luke. Give us a great amount of details on that. But our Bible reading came up in Luke chapter 1. I thought, perfect opportunity. I've kind of put it off. Normally I don't. But the Immaculate Conception is a topic that is surrounded with some myth, a little fact, and I've just never really considered delving into it personally. However, the more I've thought about it, I guess I never preached on it because it really wasn't a big interest to me, but it does hold a mystic element when a person thinks about it. And being the father of 9 kids, I kind of found it a little bit intriguing how something like this would take place. And so as I began to study that, I found a lot of myths and legends surrounding the Immaculate Conception. Like any other Bible passage or chapter, there's controversies, there's speculations, there's myths. Most of the myths surrounding the Immaculate Conception have their origin in Catholicism, but a lot of Protestant denominations cling to certain ones. Seems like with a lot of Protestantism, they pull a little bit from Catholicism and hold on to that for dear life. And so with the Immaculate Conception, that as well. According to the Catholic faith, if you look at Catholic.com, you read their website, you're going to see these things that they put out and promote as fact. And some of these are found in denominations. Some are only found in Catholicism, but they kind of surround it. So growing up, I learned these as fact, okay? And if you do a Google search on Immaculate Conception, these things are going to pop up, even though they really have nothing at all to do with the Immaculate Conception, but more about Mary herself. So we're going to begin with those things. And again, the reason I've put them up here is they show up on a quick Google search of Immaculate Conception. And so I wanted to address them. First of all, Mary was the only person to be born without, and I should use quotes, original sin. We're going to address that. Mary remains sinless throughout her entire life. That again is something that is out there on Catholic.com and many other websites. Mary is, and I did remember the quotes on this one, the Mother of God. Mary remained a virgin throughout her entire life. Mary never died, but ascended into heaven, much in the same way as Elijah the prophet, or some will say Jesus Christ himself in a very similar fashion. We'll address that. And also, I want to address all of these things. I want to make a spatial note. We're going to address all these things in light of what the Bible teaches. There's one more myth that is promoted that I misspoke this morning because, again, my mind, because I haven't spent a large amount of time studying this, my mind doesn't always separate what I've learned, what I've read, from whether or not it's in the Bible. One of the things that I was taught from a very early child was that Mary was 14 years old. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. That's not even hinted at. I have no clue whether it's accurate or inaccurate because it simply isn't there. So, and we're going to find that with a lot of these things. They simply are not in the Bible on this list. But if you Google Immaculate Conception, this stuff is going to pop up. So we need to do what we do all the time and let the Bible be our standard for teaching. And so we're going to look at these, quote, facts, and we're going to examine them, whether they're true or false. And before we delve into that, allow me to say this. The Bible, as God's inspired word, never contradicts itself. We can be reading along and we might find a place and we might say, this sounds contradictory. Look at the context. The Bible never, ever contradicts itself. So we need to look at the Bible. If we find a passage that seems contradictory, we need to look at it in its entirety and ask yourself, who is the author? Who was it written to? Ask yourself, what was the purpose of the letter? Why was it written? We need to ask ourselves what applications we can get from this and how this fits into the context and what we're reading. So again, there are several things that are argumentative about this. First of all, let's address the first issue. Mary was the only person to be born without, and again, I left the quotes off, original sin. I think, first of all, we need to address the original sin issue. Okay, original sin is a Calvinistic doctrine that has its roots in, we call it Calvinism, but really it has its roots in Catholicism. So to call original sin Calvinism is a misstatement. But the idea, allow me if you will to explain the idea is that Adam's sin and Eve's sin in the Garden of Eden has tainted every human being that has ever walked the face of the earth. Now, allow me to say this again. Adam and Eve sinned, and through their sin, death entered the world. However, if such a thing as original sin from Adam and Eve exists, and therefore all human beings carry with them Adam and Eve's sin, that's the idea, the philosophy of original sin. If all human beings carry with them original sin, this has transcended both Old and New Testaments. So I have several passages that are in the Old Testament and that prove there is no such thing as original sin. Ezekiel chapter 18 is the best, clearest example that I have been able to find on the idea of original sin. See, even the Jewish traditions talked about original sin. And that's where God begins to address this issue when he's speaking to Ezekiel the prophet. Ezekiel 18 verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me. What do you mean by repeating this proverb concerning the land of Israel? Okay, so a proverb is kind of a poetic way of looking at something that is generally true. And so apparently there was a proverb circulated through Israel, and the proverb went like this. And Ezekiel quotes, "The fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge." In other words, the proverb is saying, if a parent does something, eats something, conducts themselves in a way, then somehow that is passed on to their children. Now, I will grant you, we have a saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Okay? We have that saying. In fact, I might have used that earlier today. But we need to recognize what God is talking about is very similar to that saying. Notice verse 3. God clarifies how he conducts and judges. He says, "As I live, declares the Lord, this proverb shall no more be used by you in the land of Israel, in Israel. Behold, all souls," of course, souls are the eternal part of the human being, "all souls are mine. The soul of the Father as well as the soul of the Son is mine. The soul who sins shall die." Now drop down. I would encourage you, if you question this, have an interest in this, read the entire 18th chapter of Ezekiel. But for time's sake, drop down with me to verse 20. Again, God repeats, "The soul who sins shall die. The Son shall not suffer for the iniquity of the Father, nor the Father suffer for the iniquity of the Son." Well, Abe, you just got off the hook. Okay, so what he's saying is, I am not going to hold the evil that a parent does against the children. And I'm not going to hold the parent responsible for the child. This, of course, is in an eternal sense. I am not going to bear responsibility for what my parents believe or don't believe, or how they conduct their lives. As a free moral agent, I am responsible for my own life.